On August 23rd, 1944, at 10:30 a.m., two American Liberator B24 bombers began a test flight after taking off from the Warton Aerodrome in Lancashire, England. It would end horribly when one of the planes crashed into the village of Freckleton, killing 61 people, including 38 children, in the most devastating Allied air disaster throughout the entirety of the war. As the Allies fought for our freedom in the skies of Europe, airbase depots with loads of bombers, fighters, parts, and ammunition dotted the British coastlines. One of these was the Warton Aerodrome, often called BAD 2, Base Air Depot 2. These depots acted as service, assembly, and testing centers for Allied aircraft, especially bombers, like the Liberator B24 used by the Americans. Many B-24s used in Europe were assembled here. 10,000 Americans worked day and night at Warton, and while they weren't working, they lived in the village of Freckleton. Situated in Lancashire, just a mile from the aerodrome and 3 miles from Preston, Freckleton was known by many as Little America in Britain, thanks to the large population of American soldiers. But on August 23, 1944, the town became synonymous with tragedy. First Lieutenant John Blumenthal, an American pilot from St. Paul, Minnesota, climbed aboard a B-24 bomber named Classy Chassis 2 at Warton for a routine test flight. He's the officer of the day at the aerodrome, which means he's the one giving orders. The flight was scheduled for 8:30 a.m., but John received an urgent phone call delaying it for 2 hours. Meanwhile, the children of Freckleton packed the tiny Holy Trinity School, containing just a handful of classrooms. There was an infant's wing for 41 children, and another wing for older students. It's the second day of the new school year, and freshly hired teacher Jenny Hall, just 21 years old, went about getting everything ready for the day's lessons. Joining her is Louisa Holm, a veteran lecturer due to retire the very next week. Meanwhile, across the street at the Sad Sack Cafe, highly popular with locals and American soldiers, owners Alan and Rachel Whittle went about setting up shop. They knew American and British soldiers would be coming in looking for something better than rations. All the time, clouds rolled in from the Irish Sea. They bring rain showers, not unusual for Britain, especially not Freckleton, but not ideal for flying. Nevertheless, Lieutenant Blumenthal, now finished with his call, strapped on his parachute and prepared for the 10:30 test flight. John and his colleagues conduct routine flight checks, then fire up the engines and roll onto the runway. John would pilot one B-24, while the other was under the steady hands of First Lieutenant Pete Menacero of San Mateo, California. They received clearance for takeoff and catapulted down the runway, lifting into the air one after the other. The two planes reached about 1,500 feet, and Blumenthal looked east. He saw thunderclouds rolling in. He called Lieutenant Menacero on the radio and alerted him of the clouds. Meanwhile, Warton received a phone call from another air depot nearby, warning them of strong thunderstorms entering the region. Menacero and Blumenthal were both told to land as soon as possible, as the conditions weren't safe for flying. It didn't take long for the storms to start, and as predicted, they were intense. Lightning crackled everywhere, the wind blasted it up to 70 miles per hour, destroying shacks and knocking down trees, and rain flooded the streets. It looked like midnight came early, and sounded like the end of the world. At the Holy Trinity School, the storms are hard to miss. The teachers tell the children to rest their heads while they read a story, hoping to calm down frightened students. Mr. Billington, the headmaster of the school, asks one student to go throughout the school and close the windows so the rain doesn't get in. The boy ensures all the windows are shut. At the same time, Lieutenant Blumenthal struggles to navigate his B-24 through the storm. Lieutenant Manicero is just 100 yards behind his right wing. He tells Blumenthal they'll never make it. He's not even going to try to land. He can't see anything out of the window because of the rain. While already on approach and clear to land at Warton, Manicero wanted to go north and let the storm pass before landing, and Blumenthal agreed. "Roger," Blumenthal says. They pull up their landing gear and start to climb, then bank north. But a sudden downdraft grabs Blumenthal's B-24 and drags it lower and lower in the air. Then he spirals out of control. He pulls on the controls with all he has to save the plane, to save the people who will die if it crashes. He orders co-pilot Jimmy Parr to increase their airspeed, but they fail. Classy Chassis 2 is determined to destroy itself. The wings clip some trees and buildings, tumbling along before the whole thing slams into the ground, and into the Sad Sack Cafe. Flames tore through the cafe as the nose of the plane cut through the infants' classroom at Holy Trinity School, blowing it up. With a full load of fuel, the flames were explosive and towering. Little remained of the infant's wing or the plane, only a mix of charred brick and melted sheet metal. Blumenthal and his crew are dead, as are all but 3 of the children in the infant's wing, and both teachers. Mr. Billington survived and helped rescue the few other survivors. There were no casualties among the older students, as their classrooms went untouched, but many lost brothers, sisters, and cousins. 18 of the 20 people inside the Sad Sack Cafe also die, including the widows, the waiters, 11 soldiers, and 1 civilian. Only 2 RAF sergeants survive. The cause of the crash went mostly undetermined, but it's believed to be a mix of the severe weather and possible mechanical failures caused by the weather. It's also believed that the reduced visibility played a role. The devastation in Freckleton seemed bottomless. An entire generation of children wiped out in seconds. One woman, Jane Gardner, lost her daughter and 2 nieces. The daughter's body was never found. The same day of the tragedy, she found out that her husband was killed in action while fighting in France. At the Holy Trinity Church on August 26th, a series of coffins lined the floor for the funeral service. They were buried together in a mass grave in a cross formation, with the children making up the arm section and the adults forming the body. It makes up a memorial that remains in place today. On the wall of the school, 1 clock stopped at 10:47 a.m., the moment the plane smashed into the building and ended the hopes and dreams of so many people. Literally and figuratively, time stopped in Freckleton that day. For 61 people, it never restarted.